Welcome to my podcast, Love and Courageous. I'm your host, Demetris. And for today's episode, I'll be speaking about how the government in America works. In America, the federal government is broken into three branches: the legislative, executive, and judicial. And I'm going to go over each one and what each branch do. So the legislative make laws, and that consists of Congress, which makes up the House of Representatives and the Senate. Executive branch carry out laws that consists of the president, vice president, cabinet, and most federal agencies. The judicial is what evaluate laws. So this consists of the Supreme Court and other courts. I'm going to start with the legislative branch first. Okay, so the legislative branch consists of the House of Representatives and the Senate, which makes up Congress. The Constitution grants Congress the sole authority to enact legislation and declare war. They have the right to confirm or reject any presidential appointments and substantial investigative powers. The House of Representatives is made up of 435 elective members, which is divided among the 50 states in America. There are 6 non-voting members representing the District of Columbia, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, and 4 other territories of United States, which are American Samoa, Guam, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands. Now, the presiding officer of the chamber is the Speaker of the House, elected by the representatives. This person is third in the line of succession to the presidency. Now, members of the House are elected every 2 years, and you have to be at least 25 years old and a citizen for at least 7 years. The House has a few powers, including the power to initiate revenue bills, impeach federal officials, and elect the president in the case of an electoral college tie. The Senate is composed of 100 senators, 2 for each state, and the senators' terms are staggered. So about 1/3 of the Senate is up for re-election every 2 years, and you at least have to be 30 years of age and a citizen in America for at least 9 years. The vice president serves as president of the Senate and may cast the decisive vote in the event of a tie in the Senate. Now, the Senate has the sole power to confirm those are the president appointments that require consent and to provide advice and consent to ratify treaties. Now, there are 2 exceptions to this rule. One, the House must also approve appointments to the vice presidency and any treaty that involves foreign trade. Now, the Senate also tries impeachment cases for federal officials referred to it by the House. Now, I'm going to go into a little bit more depth and go into the legislative process. So the first step is the introduction of a bill to Congress. Anyone who can write it, but only members of Congress can introduce legislation. Some important bills are traditionally introduced at the request of the president, such as the annual federal budget. During this legislation process, the initial bill can undergo drastic changes. So after the bill is introduced, it is referred to the appropriate committee for review. There are 17 Senate committees with 70 subcommittees and 23 House committees with 104 subcommittees. The committees are not set in stone, but change in number and form with each new Congress as required for the efficient consideration of legislation. Each committee oversees a specific policy area, and the subcommittees take on more specialized policy areas. A bill is considered in a subcommittee first, where it may be accepted, amended, or rejected entirely. If the members of the subcommittee agrees to move a bill forward, it is then reported to the full committee, where the process is repeated again. Now, throughout this process, the committee and subcommittees call hearings to investigate the merits and flaws of the bill. They invite advocates, experts, and opponents to appear before the committee and provide testimony, and can compel people to appear using subpoena power if necessary. Now, if the full committee votes to approve the bill, it is then reported to the floor of the House or Senate, and the majority party leadership decides when to place the bill on the calendar for consideration. Now, if the bill is particularly pressing, it may be considered right away. Now, others may wait for months or never be scheduled at all. But when the bill comes up for consideration, the House has a debate process to go through. Each member who wishes to speak only has a few minutes, and the number and kind of amendments are usually limited. When it comes to the Senate, the debate on most bills is unlimited. Senators may speak to issues other than the bill under consideration during their speeches, and any amendment can be introduced. Senators can use this filibuster bills under consideration, a procedure by which a senator delays a vote on a bill, and by extension its passage by refusing to stand down. A submajority of 60 senators can break a filibuster by invoking cloture or the session of debate on the bill and forcing a vote. Once the debate is over, the votes of a simple majority pass the bill. So a bill must pass both houses of Congress before it goes to the president for consideration. To bring the bills into alignment, a conference committee is convened, consisting of members from both chambers. The members of the committee produce a conference report intended as the final version of the bill. Each chamber then votes again to approve the conference report. Depending on where the bill originated, the final text is then enrolled by either the clerk of the House or the secretary of the Senate and presented to the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate for their signature. The bill is then sent to the President. When receiving a bill from Congress, the President has several options. If the President agrees substantially with the bill, the President may sign it into law, and the bill is then printed in the statutes at large. Now, if the President believes the law to be a bad policy, he or she can reject the bill and send it back to Congress. Now, however, Congress may override the veto with a 2/3 vote of each chamber, at which point the bill becomes law and is printed. Now, however, there are two other options that the president may exercise. If Congress is in session and the president takes no action within 10 days, the bill becomes law. If Congress adjourns before 10 days are up and the president takes no action, then the bill dies and Congress may not vote to override. This is called a pocket veto, and if Congress still wants to pass the legislation, they must begin the process all over again. Now I'm going to get into the executive branch. Now, the president is both the head of state and the head of government in America and commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Now, the president is responsible for the execution and enforcement of the laws created by Congress. 15 executive departments, each led by an appointed member of the president's cabinet, carry out the day-to-day administration of the federal government. They are joined in by other executive agencies such as the CIA, Environmental Protection Agency, the heads of which are not part of the cabinet, but are under the full authority of the president. The president also appoints the heads of more than 50 independent federal commissions, such as the Federal Reserve Board, the Securities and Exchange Commission, as well as federal judges, ambassadors, and other federal offices. The Executive Office of the President, also known as EOP, consists of the immediate staff to the President, along with entities such as the Office of Management and Budget and the Office of the United States Trade Representative. The President has the power to either sign legislation into law or to veto bills enacted by Congress. Like I said earlier, Congress can override a veto with 2/3 vote by both houses. The executive branch conducts diplomacy with other nations, and the president has the power to negotiate and sign treaties, which the Senate ratifies. The president can issue executive orders which direct executive officers or clarify and further existing laws. The president also has the power to extend pardons and clemencies for federal crimes. Now, there are only 3 qualifications to be president. The president must be at least 35 years old. be born in America and must live in America for at least 14 years. Now, even though people in America vote in a presidential election every 4 years, the president is not directly elected by the people. Instead, on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November of every 4 years, the people elect the members of the Electoral College, apportioned by population to the 50 states, one of each member of their congressional delegation. These electors then cast the votes for president. There are currently 538 electors in the Electoral College. Now, the president can only serve 2 4-year terms. But back then, until the 22nd Amendment to the Constitution was ratified in 1951, a president used to be able to serve unlimited number of terms. When it comes to the vice president responsibilities are to be ready at a moment's notice to assume the presidency if the president is unable to perform his or her duties. This can be due to the president's death, resignation, or temporary incapacitation, or if the vice president and majority of the cabinet judge that the president is no longer able to discharge the duties of the presidency. The vice president is elected along with the president by the Electoral College. Each elector casts one vote for president and one for vice president. The vice president also serves as the president of the Senate, where the vice president casts the deciding vote in the case of a tie. Except in the case of tie-breaking votes, the vice president rarely actually presides over the Senate. Instead, the Senate selects one of their own members, usually junior members of the majority party, to preside over the Senate each day. Each day, the president is faced with scores of decisions, each with important consequences for America's future. To provide the president with the support that he or she needs to govern effectively, the executive office of the president, also known as EOP, was created in 1939 by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The EOP has responsibilities for tasks ranging from communicating the president's message to the public to promoting our trade interests abroad. Now, when it comes to the cabinet is an advisory body made up of 15 executive departments. Appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate, the members of the cabinet are often the president's closest confidants. In addition to running major federal agencies, they play a role in the presidential line of succession. After the vice president, Speaker of the House, and Senate President pro tempore, the line of succession continues with the cabinet offices in the order in which the department was created. All the members of the cabinet take the title of secretary, excepting the head of the Justice Department, who is styled Attorney General. So I'm going to go over each department and exactly what their roles are. So the Department of Agriculture, also known as USDA, develops and executes policy on farming, food, and agriculture. Its aims include meeting the needs of farmers and ranchers, promoting agricultural trade, production, assuring food safety, protecting forests and other natural resources, fostering rural prosperity, and ending hunger in America and abroad. Now, the USDA employs nearly 100,000 people and has an annual budget of approximately $150 billion. It consists of 16 agencies, including the Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, the Food and Nutrition Service, the Forest Service. The bulk of the department's budget goes towards mandatory programs that provide services required by law, such as programs designed to provide nutrition assistance, promote agricultural exports, and conserve our environment. The USDA also plays a role in overseas aid programs by providing surplus food to developing countries. When it comes to the Department of Commerce, the department is the government agency tasked with creating the conditions for economic growth and opportunity. The department supports the U.S. business and industry through a number of services, including gathering economic and demographic data, issuing patents and trademarks, improving understanding of the environment and oceanic life, and ensuring the effective use of scientific and technical resources. The agency also formulates telecommunications and technology policy and promote U.S. exports by assisting and enforcing international trade agreements. The United States Secretary of Commerce oversees a $8.9 billion budget and has more than 41,000 employees. When it comes to the Department of Defense, also known as DoD, is to provide the military forces needed to deter war and to protect the security of our country. The DoD consists of the Department of the Army, Navy, and Air Force, as well as other agencies, offices, and commands, including the Joint Chief of Staff, the Pentagon Force Protection Agency, the National Security Agency, and the Defense Intelligence Agency. The DoD is the largest government agency with more than 1.4 million men and women on active duty, more than 700,000 civilian personnel, and 1.1 million citizens who serve in the National Guard and Reserve Forces. Together, the military and civilian arms of DoD protect national interests through warfighting, providing humanitarian aid, and performing peacekeeping and disaster relief services. When it comes to the Department of Education, the mission is to promote student learning and preparation for college, careers, and citizenship in a global economy by fostering educational excellence by ensuring equal access to educational opportunity. The department administers federal financial aid for higher education, oversees educational programs and civil rights laws that promote equity and student learning opportunities, collects data, and sponsors research on America's schools to guide improvements in education quality, and works to complement the efforts of state and local governments, parents, and students. The U.S. Secretary of Education oversees the department 4,200 employees and has a budget of $68.6 billion. The Department of Energy. The mission is to advance the national economic and energy security in America. The Department of Energy, also known as DOE, promotes America's energy security by encouraging the development of reliable, clean, and affordable energy. It administers federal funding for scientific research to further the goal of discovery and innovation, ensuring American economic competitiveness and improving the quality of life for Americans. The DOE tasked with ensuring America's nuclear security and with protecting the environment by providing a responsible resolution to the legacy of nuclear weapons production. The United States Secretary of Energy oversees a budget of approximately $23 billion and has more than 100,000 federal and contract employees. The Department of Health and Human Services, also known as HAS, is America's government principal agency for protecting the health of people in America and providing essential human services, especially for those who are least able to help themselves. Agencies of the Department of Health and Human Services conduct health and social science research, work to prevent disease outbreaks, assure food and drug safety, and provide health insurance. In addition to administering Medicare and Medicaid, which together provide health coverage to 1 in 4 people in America, HHS also oversees the National Institute of Health, the Food and Drug Administration, and the Centers for Disease Control. The Secretary of Health and Human Services oversees a budget of approximately $700 billion and has approximately 65,000 employees. The department programs are administered by 11 operating divisions, including 8 agencies in the U.S. Public Health Service, 2 human services agencies, and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. The Department of Homeland Security job is to protect the American people from a wide range of foreign and domestic threats. The Department of Homeland Security, also known as DHS, has a broad and diverse mission set, including to prevent and disrupt terrorist attacks, protect critical infrastructure and civilian computer networks, facilitate lawful trade and travel, respond to and recover from natural disasters, protect our borders, and regulate the migration of individuals to and from our country. The third largest cabinet department, DHS, employs more than 250,000 people and deploys $58 billion annual budget across more than 20 components, including the U.S. Secret Service, Transportation Security Administration, Federal Emergency Management Agency, U.S. Coast Guard, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, the Homeland Security Act of 2002, established the department in response to the terrorist attacks of September 11 in 2001, and brought together 22 executive branch agencies. The Assistants to the President for Homeland Security and the Secretary of Homeland Security coordinate policy, including through the Homeland Security Council at the White House and in cooperation with other defense and intelligence agencies. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD, is the federal agency responsible for national policies and programs that address America's housing needs, improve and develop the nation's communities, and enforce fair housing laws. The department plays a major role in supporting home ownership for low and moderate income families through its mortgage insurance and rent subsidy programs. Offices within Department of Housing and Urban Development include the Federal Housing Administration, which provides mortgage and loan insurance, the Office of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity, which ensures all Americans equal access to the housing of their choice, and the Community Development Block Grant Program, which helps communities with economic development, job opportunities, and housing rehabilitation. HUD also administers public housing and homeless assistance. The Secretary of Housing and Urban Development oversees more than 9,000 employees with a budget of approximately $40 billion. The Department of the Interior, also known as DOI, is the nation's principal conservation agency. Its mission is to protect America's natural resources, offer recreation opportunities, conduct scientific research, conserve and protect fish and wildlife, and honor the U.S. government responsibilities to American Indians, Alaskan Natives, and to island communities. DOI manages approximately 500 million acres of surface land, or about 1/5 of the land in America, and manages hundreds of dams and reservoirs. Agencies within the DOI include the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Fish and Wildlife Service, and the U.S. Geological Survey. The DOI manages the national parks and is tasked with protecting endangered species. The Secretary of the Interior oversees about 70,000 employees and 200,000 volunteers on a budget of approximately $16 billion. Every year, it raises billions in revenue from energy, mineral, grazing, and timber leases, as well as recreational permits and land sales. When it comes to the Department of Justice, also known as DOJ, is to enforce law and defend the interests of America according to the law, to ensure public safety against threats, foreign and domestic, to provide federal leadership in preventing and controlling crime, to seek just punishment for those guilty of unlawful behavior, and to ensure fair and impartial administration of justice for all Americans. The DOJ is made up of 40 component organizations, including the Drug Enforcement Administration, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the U.S. Marshal, and the Federal Bureau of Prisons. The Attorney General is the head of the DOJ and Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the federal government. The Attorney General represents America in legal matters, advises the President and the heads of the executive departments of the government, and occasionally appears in person before the Supreme Court. For the Department of Justice, there's a budget of approximately $25 billion. The DOJ is the world's largest law office and the central agency for the enforcement of federal laws. When it comes to the Department of Labor, oversees federal programs for ensuring a strong American workforce. These programs address job training, safe working conditions, minimum hourly wage, and overtime pay, employment discrimination, and unemployment insurance. The Department of Labor mission is to foster and promote the welfare of the job seekers, wage owners, and retirees of the United States by improving their working conditions, advancing their opportunities for profitable employment, protecting their retirement and health care benefits, helping employers find workers, strengthening free collective bargaining, and tracking changes in employment, prices, and other national economic measurements. Offices within the Department of Labor, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, which promotes the safety and health of America's working men and women, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the federal government principal statistics agency for labor economics. The Secretary of Labor oversees 15,000 employees and on a budget of approximately $12 billion. The Department of State plays the lead role in developing and implementing the President's foreign policy. Major responsibilities include America's representation abroad, foreign assistance, foreign military training programs, countering international crime, and a wide assortment of services to U.S. citizens and foreign nationals seeking entrance to America. The U.S. maintains diplomatic relations with approximately 180 countries, each posted by civilian U.S. Foreign Service employees, as well as with international organizations. At home, more than 5,000 civil employees carry out the mission of the department. The Secretary of State serves as the President's top foreign policy advisor and oversees 30,000 employees and has a budget of approximately $35 billion. When it comes to the Department of Transportation, also known as DOT, is to ensure a fast, safe, efficient, accessible, and convenient transportation system that meets our vital national interests and enhances the quality of life of the American people. Organizations within the Department of Transportation includes the Federal Highway Administration, the Federal Aviation Administration, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, the Federal Transit Administration, the Federal Railroad Administration, and the Maritime Administration. The U.S. Secretary of Transportation oversees nearly 55,000 employees and has a budget of approximately $7 billion. When it comes to the Department of the Treasury, it is responsible for promoting inclusive economic prosperity for all people in America. The department advances U.S. and global economic growth to raise American standards of living, support communities, promote racial justice, combat climate change, and foster financial stability. The department operates systems that are critical to the nation's financial infrastructure, such as the production of coin and currency, the disbursement of payments owed to the American public, the collection of necessary taxes, and the borrowing of funds required by congressional enactments to run the federal government. The Treasury Department also performs a critical role in enhancing national security by safeguarding our financial systems, implementing economic sanctions against foreign threats to the U.S., and identifying and targeting financial support networks that threaten our national security. The Secretary of the Treasury oversees a budget of approximately $13 billion and has a staff of more than 100,000 employees. The last department is the Department of Veterans Affairs, which is responsible for administering benefit programs for veterans, their families, and their survivors. These benefits include pension, education, disability compensation, home loans, life insurance, vocational rehabilitation, survivor support, medical care, and borough benefits. Veteran Affairs became a cabinet-level department back in 1989. Of the 25 million veterans currently alive, nearly 3 of every 4 served during a war or official period of hostility. About a quarter of the nation's population, approximately 70 million people, are potentially eligible for Veteran Affairs benefits and services because they are veterans, family members, or survivors of veterans. The Secretary of Veterans Affairs oversees a budget of approximately $90 billion and have a staff of approximately 235,000 employees. The last branch is the judicial branch. Members of the judicial branch are appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate. Article 3 of the Constitution of the United States guarantees that every person accused of wrongdoing has the right to a fair trial before a competent judge and a jury of one's peers. The judicial branch leaves Congress significant discretion to determine the shape and structure of the federal judiciary. Even the number of Supreme Court justices is left to Congress. At times, there has been as few as 6, while the current number, 9, with 1 Chief Justice and 8 Associate Justices, has only been in place since 1869. The Constitution also grants Congress the power to establish courts inferior to the Supreme Court. And to that end, Congress has established the United States District Courts, which try most federal cases, and 13 United States Courts of Appeals, which review appeal district court cases. Federal judges can only be removed through impeachment by the House of Representatives and conviction in the Senate. Judges and justices serve no fixed term. They serve until retirement, death, or conviction by the Senate. By design, this insulates them from the temporary passions of the public and allows them to apply the law with only justice in mind and not electoral or political concerns. Generally, Congress determines the jurisdiction of the federal courts. In some cases, however, such as an example of a dispute between 2 or more states in America, the Constitution grants the Supreme Court original jurisdiction, an authority that cannot be stripped by Congress. The courts only try actual cases and controversies. A party must show that it has been harmed in order to bring suit in court. This means that the courts do not issue advisory opinions on the constitutionality of laws or the legality of actions if the ruling would have no practical effect. Cases brought before the judiciary typically proceed from district court to appellate court and may even end at the Supreme Court, although the Supreme Court hears comparatively few cases each year. Federal courts enjoy the sole power to interpret the law, determine the constitutionality of the law, and apply it to individual cases. The courts, like Congress, can compel the production of evidence and testimony through the use of subpoena. The inferior courts are constrained by the decisions of the Supreme Court. Once the Supreme Court interprets a law, inferior courts must apply the Supreme Court's interpretations to the facts of a particular case. So I'm going to go over the judicial process. So the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 8th Amendment to the Constitution provide additional protection for those accused of a crime. That includes a guarantee that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law, protection against being tried for the same crime twice, which is called double jeopardy, the right to a speedy trial by an impartial jury, the right to cross-examine witnesses and to call witnesses to support their case, the right to legal representation, the right to avoid self-incrimination, protection from excessive bail, excessive fines, and cruel and unusual punishments. Criminal proceedings can be conducted under either state or federal law, depending on the nature and extent of the crime. A criminal legal procedure typically begins with an arrest by a law enforcement officer. If a grand jury chooses to deliver an indictment, the accused will appear before a judge and be formally charged with a crime, at which time he or she may enter a plea. The defendant is given time to review all the evidence in the case and to build a legal argument. Then the case is brought to trial and decided by a jury. If the defendant is determined to be not guilty of the crime, the charges are dismissed. Otherwise, the judge determines the sentence, which can include prison time, a fine, or even execution. Civil cases are similar to criminal ones, but instead of arbitrating between the state and a person or organization, they deal with disputes between individuals or organizations. In civil cases, if a party believes that it has been wrong, it can file suit in civil court to attempt to have that wrong remedied through a order to cease and desist altered behavior or award monetary damages. After the suit is filed and evidence is gathered and presented by both sides, a trial proceeds as in a criminal case. If the parties involved waive their right to a jury trial, the case can be decided by a judge. Otherwise, the case is decided and damages awarded by a jury. After a criminal or civil case is tried, it may be appealed to a higher court, a federal court of appeals, or state appellate court. A litigant who files an appeal, known as an appellant, must show that the trial court or administrative agency made a legal error that affected the outcome of the case. An appellate court makes its decision based on the record of the case established by the trial court or agency. It does not receive additional evidence or hear witnesses. It may also review the factual findings of the trial court or agency, but typically may only overturn a trial outcome on factual grounds if the findings were clearly erroneous. If a defendant is found not guilty in a criminal proceedings, he or she cannot be retried on the same set of facts. Federal appeals are decided by panels of 3 judges. The appellant presents legal arguments to the panel in a written document called a brief. In the brief, the appellant tries to persuade the judges that the trial court made an error and that the lower decision should be reversed. On the other hand, the party defending against the appeal, known as the appellee or respondent, tries in its brief to show why the trial court decision was correct or why any errors made by the trial court are not significant enough to affect the outcome of the case. The Court of Appeals usually has the final word in the case, unless it sends the case back to the trial court for additional proceedings. In some cases, the decision may be reviewed and banked, that is, by a larger group of judges of the Court of Appeals for the circuit. A litigant who loses in a federal court of appeals or in the highest court of a state may file a petition for a right of certiorari, which is a document asking the U.S. Supreme Court to review the case. The Supreme Court, however, is not obligated to grant review. The court typically will agree to hear a case only when it involves a new and important legal principle, or when 2 or more federal appellate courts have interpreted a law differently. When the Supreme Court hears a case, the parties are required to file written briefs, and the court may hear oral argument. So that is all for the topic for today, and I'm going to get into the Black History Fact. For today's Black History Fact, I'll speak about the Black Panther Party social programs. So the Black Panther Party was a Marxist-Leninist and Black Power political organization founded by college students Bobby Seale and Huey P. Newton back in October the 15th in 1966 in Oakland, California. The Black Panther Party developed over 60 community service programs called survival programs to help people meet their needs. One of their most notable programs was the Free Breakfast for Children program, which began back in January 1969. This initiative was a response to the widespread poverty that left many children attending school on empty stomachs. By the end of 1969, the program was serving breakfast, which included bacon, eggs, grits, toast, and milk, to about 20,000 school-aged children in 19 cities across America, with 23 local affiliates participating every school day. In addition to providing them with much-needed nourishment, this program helped them develop a sense of The Free Breakfast for Children program highlighted the Black Panthers Party innovative approach to addressing systemic issues by ensuring that children had a nutritious start to their day. The Panthers aim to improve educational outcomes and overall health in underserved communities. This program demonstrated the power of grassroots initiatives to create tangible and positive changes in people's daily lives. Another program that the Black Panther Party created was free clothing and shoes, providing necessary clothing items to those in need. This initiative helped to alleviate the financial burden on families struggling to afford basic necessities, ensuring that children and adults alike had access to appropriate attire for school and work. Another program was medical services, offering free medical clinics and drug and alcohol awareness programs. The Black Panther Party healthcare initiatives were groundbreaking. They provided crucial services in communities that were often neglected by mainstream medical institutions. They handled a variety of health-related concerns, including regular checkups, specialized treatments, and public health and wellness education. Education on legal aid was another program. This program empowered community members with knowledge and resources to navigate the legal system, help individuals understand their legal rights, protect their rights, fight against injustices, and offer legal assistance. It also included efforts to provide legal representation for those who could not afford it, ensuring that everyone had access to justice. Early childhood education is the Black Panther Party created some of the first early childhood education programs in the nation, which preceded the federal Head Start program. These initiatives aim to provide young children with a strong educational foundation, recognizing the critical importance of early learning experiences. And I'm going to list a few of the Black Panther Party's programs that they have created. So one is Benefit Counseling, Black Student Alliance, Child Development Center, Consumer Education Classes, Disabled Person Services, Transportation and Attendant, Drama Classes, Drill Team, Employment Referral Service, Free Ambulance Program, Free Busing to Prisons Program, Free Dental Program, Free Employment Program, Free Film Series, Free Furniture Program, Free Housing Cooperative Program, Food Cooperative Program, Free Pest Control Program, Free Plumbing and Maintenance Program, GYN Clinic, Home Safe Visits, Junior High and High School Tutorial Program, Pediatric Clinic, Police Patrols, Safe Club, Sickle Cell Anemia Research Foundation, WIC Program, Visiting Nursing Programs, and more. That is all for today. For my next episode, I'll be speaking about Donald Trump cabinet team. So thank you everyone for listening to my podcast, and I hope you all have a lovely day.